kick off my birthday month, Gemini's rule, by the way, we now know the name of the team that my Calgary Stampeders like to beat on Labor Day. Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I know I'm a Calgary sports fan, and that's what I mostly do on my YouTube channel, so just make sure you hit like and subscribe if this is what you be interested in to follow along this Calgary sports fan's journey. Anyway, back in February, you can see this video right here where I talked about and ranking proposed names that the Edmonton Football Team was going to call themselves to replace the Eskimos name. Well, we know that the Edmonton Football Team are now going to be called the Elks. And that ultimately, given the finalists of the final names that were released back in February for the top 7 finalists, excuse me, that the Elk was the name that I wanted the most, and ultimately it's the Edmonton Elks. I guess they put the S on the name of the end of the name because it did actually say Elk on the ballot, and I made my video. If I were to submit a ballot as a Calgary Stampeders and CFL fan, I mean, Edmonton's a team that we love to hate, being a provincial rival, but I have a vested interest in it just because of it's the league. And, you know, if I'm making a video on it and talking about it, you know, this is also a marketing play and some new merch, and got to think of very different helmets that the Edmonton Elks are going to be unveiling as well, and I'll bring up the story on CFL.ca, but yes, Edmonton is now called the Elks, and I would say I ultimately like that name the most because of the finalists, that there was actually some history with the name because there was a rugby team back in the day when I was doing my Remember the Calgary series, and it was episode 5 where I talked about the Calgary Tigers, that there was a team that played rugby because there was a Calgary Tigers rugby team as well. Mostly looked at the hockey team. There was actually a team called the Edmonton Elks, and then if you look at the surrounding area, the nature, including Elk Island National Park, which is east of Edmonton, and just the northern wilderness as you go northern in Alberta, that the elk name actually, you know, fits the area, and there's actually history with the name. But as I said, the headline here, Edmonton officially announces team name as Elks, as they're always going to be the Eskimos to me. I mean, given I've been around for almost 39 years and being a CFL fan, and the long history is this team is over 70 years old. It's like if suddenly I decide to call myself John Smith, most people are going to still know me as Brett Hornby, but the history, but you know, it's just everything gets so, let's just say, politically correct. And I mean, it's a proud name that I remember with the Eskimos. I mean, it's the most northern city and proud people. I mean, there's some indigenous history that has a brutal history, but I mean, that's unfortunately with some things, but it's just people's attitudes and cultures are changing now that the Edmonton Football Team elected to change the name. But you know, this is kind of a marketing ploy too, with the new merch, new name, new excitement, and hopefully they're still planning on having a season starting in August, and I'm going to assume that whenever the schedule comes out, we're still going to be taking on Edmonton on Labor Day. Go Stamps. I guess we'll have to beat the Elks now. But as I say, Edmonton officially announced on Tuesday that their team name will be known as the Edmonton Elks. Along with this new name, the team also revealed its new logo, which is kind of also interesting, kind of going back to that. If you go back to the video that I made in February, Edmonton was intending on keeping the green and gold colors and their iconic double E logo. But they actually revealed a new logo, so I guess it's kind of another marketing ploy as well. But it was officially on July 21st, 2020. Edmonton discontinued the Eskimos name. Well, fine, new one. This came at the same time when Washington Football Club, where they were called the Washington Redskins for over 65 years, that there's been pressure for Washington to change their name. And as I know, they're still looking for a new name themselves. I think the Redbirds, I understand, is still the front running what Washington's going to eventually call themselves, but this kind of came in the same vein of that, because ultimately the Washington Football Club, formerly known as the Redskins, where FedEx Field is where the field that the team plays in, they pressured that they're going to withdraw. The team didn't change their name, but ultimately Edmonton got backing from sponsors pulling out for the Eskimo name, especially Bel Air Direct Insurance, Bel Air Insurance, and actually Boston Pizza. But it's definitely interesting how many names you submit, because it was November 2020 the team asked the public to join the name time, EE name time, and apparently there was 14,833 submissions with over 2,047 unique names from all over the world. And then ultimately came down to the final 7, where I remember it was the Elk Hounds, and then there was the Eclipse, the Elements, the Eagles, and then the Evergolds and the Evergreens. And that's when I made that video to talk about those names, my feeling on them as a CFL and a Calgary Stampeder fan, knowing on Labor Day this is the team that we play and like to beat. Well, back we've beaten Edmonton on Labor Day every year since 2012, so there is merit to that. Calgary also has a proud history on Labor Day, but the process actually began back in 2020 of August after the Eskimos discontinued their name, and then I'll put the link in the description for this story, but it was February 2021 when I made that video that the names were distilled to 7 choices, which are based on the findings of brand selections held in 2020. The survey received, 38,761 responses, and they were broken down by location, age, and other key demographics who were submitting the preference. I just made a video if hypothetically if Edmonton came to me knowing I'm a CFL fan and I have some invested interest. Even as a Calgary Stampeders fan on Labor Day, that's why I made that video in case for that, if I were to submit a ballot. But it was also done with season ticket holders, alumni, players, partners, coaches, and the general public. So this definitely came, the big deal. I mean, obviously you change the name after a team after 70 years and, in the community. I mean, obviously it's all the amount of money you got to spend on rebranding, renaming. But I think with the merchandise, it's going to definitely make up for it then some. And hopefully with fans' appetite of finally getting back in the game. But to say across all the responses, it became clear that Elk was highly favored through all demographics and category. When a team heard from players and coaches who overwhelmingly voted for the Elk, the choices became very clear. I mean, it also talks about in the article that after a lengthy debate, consultation with the linguistics experts from the Oxford Dictionary and the University of Alberta's Linguistics Department, the name Elks were formally chosen out of the S, because originally Elk was on the name and the Elks was that rugby team that I talked about from the history. And then the new name reflects speed, strength, and resilience of the green and gold in northern Alberta. And it talks about much work has been done to keep the selection confidential on the team's merchandise were developed a full brand package to support the new name that was created. So I'm going to say those are the names that I chose from. I mean, they're always going to be the Eskimos. I like that name, but apparently, there was some pressure to change the name. And actually, the official logo that comes out actually doesn't look too far off. I mean, that if you look in that other video, I found a leaked image. Not too sure if it was actually a logo that would be used, but I was assuming back in February that they were going to still use that double E logo, and that would have been an alternate logo. It actually would be a sweet logo if Edmonton deal with that, but this one kind of looks like a futuristic logo. I mean, I'll put the graphics at the end of the video and show that helmet. It's definitely different. It kind of has that same style that the BC Lions use for their primary helmets right now, where it's not just a decal of the logo slapped on a base, one color base helmet. Maybe that's something you'll see more of in the future, but I just asked, me going on talking about the story, that what do you think of the name for the Edmonton Elks? They are now called the Edmonton Elks after being called the Eskimos for over 70 years. They're always going to be the Eskimos to me, and I always enjoy beating them on Labor Day. But I just still had some vested interest in this because of a CFL fan, and living in Alberta, I mean, obviously my allegiance is with the red and white, and this is what we wear on Labor Day when we like to beat Edmonton. But it was the best name that I found. I mean, it's my opinion on the 7 names that were submitted. I mean, other names that I liked that I thought would come in handy would be the Edmonton Empire. I actually would like the Edmonton Empire because I've been to some Eskimo games, Labor Day rematch, and Edmonton marketed themselves with one empire, kind of played on with the double E, and just showing that medieval one empire. That would have been a nice name too, but then of course, if the name Eskimos was starting to be less acceptable now in today's culture and society, Empire would definitely not be that far behind, just because it represents the gladiator days. But that's history. Was the history. And I mean, Eskimos is part of Canadian history. When you look at the indigenous people up in the Arctic, I know that there is a brutal past with some of it from behind, but I know that the Eskimos represent northern pride and culture. That's kind of my layman's way of saying it. But it is what it is. I mean, the Elks. I mean, it works. I mean, even then, you could say, going back to the other things I've been doing more on my YouTube channel, in addition to just talking Calgary sports and sports in general, that interests me as a Calgary sports fan. I've been doing more logging on the go, and I've been going back to schools in the past. And actually, when I went to Dr. Apert, the junior high school, they were called the Elks. So I guess I have some connection to the Elks indirectly, but red and black and white were the colors for the Elk colors at the time when I was going to Dr. Apert, when I was on the wrestling team back in grade 8. But yeah, bring on the Elks. As I'll say, that's the team we like to beat on Labor Day. So what do you think of the name? What other names would you have considered if the Eskimos was the name that have to be changed for the Edmonton Football Club or the Edmonton Football Team or the Double E? But it definitely is a new marketing ploy, and sparks some interest. Definitely going to make up that money back and then some with the name change, the rebranding, and hopefully just getting fans interested to get back into the stadium. Assuming we get to do that, and apparently according to being here in Alberta, if you believe our government that the open for summer plan, if things go as planned with case numbers going in the right direction and vaccinations going in the right direction, apparently there's plans that starting in July, but they won't be till August 5th, 2021, that the CFL is trying to play plan. That either at McMahon Stadium or the Brickfield at Commonwealth, that there's going to be open to full attendance. So just in time for Labor Day for my Stampeders to beat now the Edmonton Elk, and then when I'm assuming I get to do it when I pack my red and go up to QE2 to watch the Stampeders beat the Elk in their house. It's all great. Definitely missed that, but that's all I have for this story at the Edmonton Football Club, or the Edmonton Football Team. They are now the Edmonton Elks. So what do you think? So anyways, I'd like to say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, home of Flames, Hitman, Roughnecks, and Stampeders. But as a Stampeder fan and a CFL fan, I had some invested interest in this as well, because this is my biggest rival team. Some years more so than others. I mean, you could also say we have a nice rivalry with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, but it's always the Battle of Alberta with Calgary and Edmonton, with the Stampeders and now Elks on Labor Day. But I also do a variety of non-sports content, like personal vlogs. I just talk about whatever is on my mind. And I do some attempt to comedy, is what it is, try to be funny. And I do share my experience I'm on the road or at a sport event. Hopefully later this year, now that we're into June 2021. Hopefully 3 months from now, I'll be at McMahon Stadium, capturing the Jets flying above, which I usually do. And we're playing, I guess now, the Elks, and getting ready to beat the Elks on Labor Day. And then the vlogging on the go, as I touched upon, as it's anything goes with that, just gets me out of the house and share my experiences from the past and how the city I love and I live and work in has changed. So if that all sounds like it'd be interesting to watch, to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, just make sure you hit like and subscribe. I also have my other social media links down in the description below. So still going to say go Stamps go. Bring on the Elks. We'll look forward to Labor Day, which I assume is going to be the first matchup when we take on the newly minted Elks. And just looking forward to gather and compete again in the future. And let's say, yep, Stamps and Elks on Labor Day. Doesn't quite have that same ring to it, but you know, the rivalry is always going to be there in the Battle of Alberta. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. And you know, this is where I lie in the Battle of Alberta. Red is always my color, my favorite color, but sometimes you gotta acknowledge the enemies up in our province, because the Battle of Alberta has always been going on, which keeps Alberta resilient between Calgary and Edmonton. That's what keeps Alberta going. So thank you.